years ago. Alex Stone following the story. Good morning, Alex Stone.
Hey, McGraw, good morning. Yeah, 10 years ago, we all had BlackBerry devices or a flip phone in your pocket. There were large crowds lined up on this day outside of Apple stores to get their hands on really what was a mythical, mysterious device that Steve Jobs had unveiled there. And it had been announced at Macworld. There was all kinds of speculation about what the iPhone was going to be. Jobs told us he knew he had a winner.
I think we're going to hit a grand slam with this.
A grand slam. I mean, it really was. It created what Apple is today. And you may be saying, well, I have an Android device or a Windows phone, but iPhone was the first. We had the BlackBerries. We had something that you could call a smartphone, but to create what we now think of as a smartphone with everything touch on screen and all of the apps, that is something that was developed by Apple and was really iPhone, and then other companies followed after that. 10 years later, today, it's the 10th anniversary of the iPhone.
It didn't just transform the phone, right? It's news, it's movies, it's songs, it's radio, it's television, it's right. It is newspapers. It has transformed everything.
Yeah. Oh, well, when's the last time you bought a map, a calculator, an encyclopedia, a flashlight, a camera? I mean, unless you're a professional photographer, that most people are using their phones as their camera now. Wallets in some cases, and more so now as more and more people start using Apple Pay and other services like it. It put the internet in your pocket, that you could walk around and be connected, and every time your child comes up with some crazy fact, you can say, no, I think you're wrong on that, and actually look up the real answer. And it came a long way. The original iPhone didn't have a flash. It didn't have a selfie camera. You couldn't take video. You couldn't send any multimedia. If you wanted to send an iMessage or a text, you could only do it with text, but without a picture, which nobody really understood since it was a quote-unquote camera phone at that time, but yet you couldn't send those pictures. It was only 2G. It wasn't even 3G at that time when everything was 3G. Now we're 4G LTE in many cases. That there were a lot of ways that on paper it was not the perfect phone, but yet when it came out and people could touch it and they could feel it, it was a very different case at that point once they saw what it really was.
Is Apple doing anything today to mark the anniversary?
They are not. I talked to Apple last night, and they said no, that they're just going to have another day at the office, that they don't plan on anything. We may see some kind of marking of this date with the next iPhone. There's some rumors they might call it iPhone X for the 10th anniversary of the iPhone, go Roman numerals. Others say no, they'll go iPhone 8 to come after the 7, but when they make their announcement in September for what they're going to have for the next year, we'll find out then. But no, they say on the Apple campus, folks are coming to work, and, hey, some employee may bring in a cake, but for the most part, it's just another day at Apple.
The stories about Steve Jobs and the pressure he put on the workers to get this done, right? I mean, that's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, and he did this with all of his projects. We now know that he was, in some ways, almost seemed like there was some insanity there to his workers as he was pushing them to get every little thing right, that he wanted it to be not only a piece of technology, but to be a piece of art as well, to feel good, to look good, to have the beveled edges, to be perfect, where when you feel it, it felt like something that you had never felt before. And that's truly what it was. We were used to, the BlackBerry had the physical keys. He didn't want that. The first time we all typed on glass, I mean, how funky did that feel? And even today, we get so many of our emails wrong where you're trying to read it from somebody and you're going, what does that say?
Right.
Because it wasn't that thing. A lot of people didn't think they wanted that, but in the end they did.
Well, do you remember the T9 technology where you had to hit 5 3 times to get the O, right? Or as you said, the BlackBerry where you had 70,000 buttons on it. This went from all those buttons to no buttons.
Yeah, but yet so many buttons at the same time because it was all on glass. And at the beginning, it came with 15 native apps. Right. And you couldn't add any more unless you went through a lot of rigmarole to get onto websites. And there was no app store until a year after the iPhone came out. And it was something that a lot of people said, look, you've got this device that originally was only 4 gigs and then went up to 8 gigs. Now imagine you couldn't have half of your apps if it was only on 8 gigs today. That it was a very different phone. But a year later, the app store would come out. And that would create all of these companies like Uber and in some cases Airbnb and Twitter. So many of these that have now been built off of apps, and then other companies followed and created something similar.
Alex Stone, 10 years later, the iPhone went on sale. Alex, thanks for the walk down memory lane.
You got it. Thanks, McGraw.